Hello friends, and welcome to this new week for the course wastewater treatment and recycling. So, we have eventually ventured into the 11th week. So, we will be discussing the last leg of this course, which is more focused on the reuse and recycling aspects of wastewater. So far we have basically talked about various aspects related to the production, characterization, then its natural attenuation, engineered purification systems. So, all those things we discussed. The objective of treatment is either to dispose of the wastewater or to make it fit for reuse or recyclable purposes. So, it is as the stress on water resources are going on, there is more and more emphasis on the recycling aspect, and the disposal of the wastewater is strongly being discouraged by the government, by the regulatory agencies, by the society as well. So, although still large portion is just disposed of, very little recycling is there, particularly in the developing world including India. There is a very minimal wastewater which goes to the recycling, and majority of them is actually disposed of, and in fact most of them disposed of untreated. That is the unfortunate scenario. In developed world also, it is not the recycling is something which is just catching up. So, still not as such all of the wastewater which is produced is recycled. In fact, the Singapore has done pretty well in this domain. So, they produce they kind of recycle the sewage they produced and augment it with the domestic water systems in the name of new water systems. So, we will be talking about these various aspects in concept of wastewater treatment and recycling in this last couple of weeks starting this week. So, let us begin with first thing, why we should say no to the wastewater disposal. Okay, because wastewater is something which we have been disposing of since ages. Okay, since we get into the civilized systems. So, more and more civilization or development has taken place, the more and more concentrated growth has taken place, and that way we have generated concentrated or in terms of volume I am saying. So, concentrated amount of the wastewaters which we have traditionally been disposing of to the natural systems. So, either land systems or the conventional or typical water resources system. So, this is the practice that people have been adopting since quite long, but it is high time that we should rethink rather over this. So, in what sense we we have to make a decision that whether we keep on continuing the practice which we have been doing since ages, or are there scope for the improvements. So, the wastewater disposal which we have been kind of engaged with, which we have been doing since quite some time now. So, there are basically if you see the scenario, there are several parts of the nation is already suffering with inadequate water supply and poor water quality. Every now and then we see that there is drought in this state, drought in that state, particularly the western states and central states in the country are more suffered to these kind of drought situations. So, we do not have adequate amount of water for fulfilling our domestic needs, industrial needs, agricultural needs. Okay. At the same time, we are facing poor water quality in our natural water resources. It is almost known to everyone that how our rivers has basically turned into the polluted water storage systems. Okay. Majority of the river in the country are not having a good enough water quality which one can go and straightforward utilize it for some purpose. Even many of the rivers, it is not even safe to take just bath in the river. Okay. So, the quality of water in the Ganga, Yamuna, all major rivers, Kaveri, there has been basically quality issues with the majority of the river systems in India. Okay. So is the condition of our lakes, our other systems, and in fact we more often than now we see that the groundwaters are also increasingly getting contaminated at various places with a variety of contaminants which not only includes the geogenic or natural contaminant, but also with lot of anthropogenic contribution as well. So, our water resources are suffering in terms of poor water quality and less water quantity, and that is putting more emphasis onto the supply systems as well, because there is no adequate water quantity available for supplying. Supply, we are not essentially saying for the domestic purpose. Supply means the fulfilling water requirements of all different sectors, which includes industrial sector, municipal sector, agricultural sector, and to some extent environmental and recreational sector as well. So, that is the kind of conditions which exist. Now, over and above that, when we release this untreated or partially treated wastewater into the environment, what it does? So, if your water like the quality of your water resources is not very good at first place itself, and then you are basically adding, so like say take the example of river Ganges. So, in river Ganga, we already have so much discussion of improving the water quality of the river Ganga. In spite of that, we are adding more pollutant to the river in terms of wastewater flows. Okay. So, what it will lead to? It will lead to basically further water pollution. Okay. And when we keep on polluting our resources in that way, either lakes or rivers, so that eventually deteriorates our freshwater resources, because we are loading pollutants into the nature. That is just one aspect. Second aspect is whatsoever the freshwater resources we have in terms of water, in terms of say rivers, even if you are, let us say, start with a clean river, but if you start disposing waste into that, so for how long that is going to remain clean? So, what eventually will happen, that this river system itself will get polluted. So, the one that we are considering freshwater resource, the one we are considering good enough water to be basically used for normal applications, that water is also getting polluted. So, that is kind of deterioration of the freshwater resources in terms of quantity as well. Okay. So, there is qualitative burden, there is quantitative burden, okay, and several reasons in this world are already water stressed. So, is basically several parts of India. Now, this further curbing of freshwater resources are worsening the situation in terms of quality or in terms of quantity, both way. So, at one place we are actually like getting our water resources more polluted, and the quantity is also getting affected that way, decreased that way. So, there is one this is the problem from the natural resource side. And if you see the demand side, so there is increasing demand in domestic, agricultural, industrial sector, okay, which is basically kind of further increasing stress on these resources. Okay. So, demand is increasing, resources are depleting rather, okay, because it is not just limited resources. With adding more and more pollutant to the resources, the quality of or the usable resources in fact are actually depleting that way. Our several lakes or several ponds have turned in a that bad a condition, maybe in a septic condition, that water still, even if the water is there, it is definitely not usable. Okay. So, that is the kind of situation which has arisen. So, these are the problems. Now, this problem, as we are discussing, is mostly because of the disposal of the waste which we are making. So, there is industrial wastewater, there is municipal wastewater, there is kind of agricultural wastewater. So, all those waste which we are actually disposing in the system are creating these kind of issues or these kind of problems. Now, if we see what is the alternate solution to this. So, when we say that there is a problem due to the disposal of the waste in the nature, so what is the problem? What is the kind of solution for this? The solution is reuse and recycle of the wastewater. Okay. So, what you see here is actually the this is the most preferable part, and then that way we are the risk is lowest, and then we are moving towards the lesser and lesser preferable options. Okay. But all these are preferable at least. Okay. So, we are discussing here preferable options. If we need to bring, if you need to say include the disposal option also, then disposal would probably come even the lower. Okay. So, that is the kind of hierarchy of the preferred option. So, first thing, we reduce the wastewater generation itself. So, how we can reduce the wastewater generation? The wastewater generation we can reduce by reducing the water usage, because whatsoever water we consume, majority of that eventually converts to the wastewater. So, if we reduce our water consumption, if we go for say water saving devices, water saving measures, so for say if you are using a toilet flush, okay, which is flushing 20 liters in just one single step, and then as opposed to that you are going to a dual flush system which may be flushing just 5 liter one, you have dual flush option. So, that might be 2-3 liter flushing in one step, and if you need more you can say go for 10 liters flushing. So, instead of just flushing 20 liters or 10 liters water in just one go, if you are just urinating, your requirement of flush is low, there is not lot of solid mass to be disposed of. So, you can go with a lesser amount of water for flushing. So, that way we can save significant amount of water. The say dishwashers, washing machines, so which are basically the water consuming devices, if we go for efficient devices like we have done in a power sector, traditionally we used to have those like glass bulb with tungsten or those kind of elements. So, say 100-watt bulb, people used to have 60-watt, 100-watt, 200-watt bulbs they used to have. Now, slowly we move to the next step of CFLs, which reduce the consumption. So, we kind of went to lower wattage of CFLs. Now, it's ages of LED. So, with this, for the same amount of light we are just spending 7 watt, 8 watts of power as opposed to the 100 watts. So, see, more than 92-93% reduction has been achieved in that way. Similarly, there are devices which are water efficient as well. So, if we instead of like going for those water consuming devices which consume high or heavy quantities of water, we go for water saving devices to produce the same effect or same output, same degree of cleaning. So, why not go for that? Okay, so, that way, or let us say the shower, so per minute how much water is being flushed from your shower, what is your actual requirement. If you go for the efficient shower, just your for the same amount of bathing hours, you can reduce your water consumption up to 40%. So, that, and there has been success stories on this. Okay. So, that way we can actually reduce the consumption. Okay. When there was a millennium drought in Australia, the various cities including Melbourne was able to reduce say their water consumption by 40% by just making these replacing those like maybe unsustainable or high water consuming devices to the water efficient devices. So, there is a huge potential in water reducing the water consumption, and when you reduce your water consumption, because your wastewater is generated from the water that you consume, so your wastewater generation will also get reduced. Then the second option is reuse. Okay. So, reuse is something when we use the water which has been used once for some other application. Okay. So, we may go for a moderate degree of treatment or we may not go for treatment at all. So, with or without treatment, if we are able to reuse that water, let us say you collected the water from house the grey water that you have collected, now you are putting it for irrigation, for horticulture purpose, okay, for gardening your flowers, okay, for watering your flowers, for watering your gardens. So, that kind of application when you is kind of reuse of water, the water that you have produced, you have just reused that water, okay, where you may provide or may not provide a treatment. Then there is something called recycled, which is usually kind of done after treatment. So, we treat that water, we reclaim the water, and then the recovered water we use kind of in the same cycle where it was generated. So, if water is being generated say from households, you treat it and supply back it for the household activities. So, that is what is recycling. Okay. So, the water you have generated say from bathroom, you have treated that and again supplied back there. So, those kind of systems are called recycled, and for the purpose of recycle we have to kind of treat the water first okay, and that is known as reclamation. So, water reclamation is the process of treating water to produce the reusable or recyclable quality of water. So, we go for whether partial treatment or full treatment, but from a waste material, if we are able to reclaim the water, if we are able to produce the water which is having certain uses, we call that as a reclamation, okay, and we call that water as a reclaimed water. So, that reclaimed water, like Singapore reclaim its municipal sewage and then augment their water supplies with that reclaimed water. So, that is kind of reclamation of water. So, these are common terminologies which are used in this sector. So, reducing the consumption, water reuse, water recycle, water reclamation. So, these have their own distinctive significant meanings, okay, which actually is different from each other. So, why we are talking about wastewater reuse or recycling? So, as just we were discussing that there are two folds of problem when we let water go into the natural resources. One is our natural resources get polluted, and as a result our freshwater supplies gets affected because we lose on the freshwater resource front. Okay. So, these two problems can actually be solved, or we can get that way. Similarly, if we able to reuse or recycle the water, we get two-way benefit also. Okay. So, by recycling and reuse of the wastewater, which is kind of considered as the most talked about approach in today's age, we help in pollution control of the natural resources, because we are not letting pollutant mass entering into the natural resources. If we are using water at some stage within our community, or that way we are not letting that water go to a pond, or we are not letting that water go to a river. So, that means we are actually reducing the water pollution in those resources. And second, and the most important part, and that is why actually the people are more concerned about wastewater reuse and recycling, is that it serves as an alternate water resource. So, there is lot of stress on our water utilities for fulfilling the demand. Our natural water resources are depleting. So, and we at same time we are producing huge amount of wastewater which we are letting go to the natural systems. So, if we are able to reclaim water from this waste water which have been produced and put it back into a use cycle, so that way we are actually able to convert this waste into a resource, okay, and we need such resources. We need alternate resources of wastewater because our existing freshwater resources are turning inadequate in quantity to meet the demands. So, when we are lacking the water resources to fulfill the demand, and at same time we are having a huge bulk amount of wastewater present, so why not consider that as a resource and process it to kind of improve its characteristics and reclaim the water from this wastewater for the using purpose. So, if we can do that, our requirement on the freshwater resources will also decrease, because at least part of this we can use, part of the demand can be met from recycling this wastewater itself. So, that way there is a kind of collective help in reducing qualitative as well as quantitative stress on the freshwater resources. Qualitative stress, because we are not loading the pollutants in the nature, so quality of the natural water resources will improve, and quantitative because we will be abstracting less water from those resources, as some of the demands could be fulfilled from these recycled water. So, that way there is reduction in the quantitative stress as well. However, the point is that recycling wastewater requires appropriate degree of treatment. The water is polluted and we cannot like straight away put it for certain uses. So, if we want to use that water, we have to process this water for producing usable or kind of fit for the purpose quality of the water, okay. And this at times could be a costly process, okay, because for the treatment purpose, for water treatment, when we get water from natural resources, it is relatively far more superior quality. So, with little degree of treatment we can put that water for supply purpose, but if we want to use wastewater, if we want to convert a highly polluted wastewater into kind of water which could be reused say at domestic scale, we have to go for high end treatments, and those high end treatments may prove quite costly. So, there is a financial aspect to the water recycling decisions, which we will discuss in the later part of the discussions in this week and the following week. So, what are the driving factors for wastewater reuse and recycling? As we have been discussing, there is a issue with the water availability. So, the resource sustainability is one of the driving factors, because if we are able to reuse or recycle the water, we are reducing the stress on your resources, and that way resources are more sustainable. Then water consumption, that could be used for meeting water demand. So, that is another major factor, and the environmental protection by improving the water quality when we do not load the pollutants into the nature, that is going to be the another factor, another important factor which motivates us for going for wastewater reuse and recycling projects. Now, if we see in far more like detailed scale, so if kind of you see the various driving factors for wastewater reuse and recycling. So, there is a population growth, industrialization and urbanization which is increasing water demand. Okay. Now, for this increasing water demand, you have to have water resources, and your fresh water, your wastewater could be actually alternate resource for the water. Okay. So, that is one of the most important deriving factors, one of the most valuable deriving factor for the purpose. Okay. So, if you see, there is a water scarcity, lack of natural resources of the water, and there is a increasing water demand. So, these two collectively leads to kind of emphasis, these two collectively highlights the need for an alternate water resource which is readily available, which can be kind of utilized for the purpose, and the easy accessibility of this wastewater makes that option of using it as a resource. So, there is lot of water in it, of course there are some contaminants. So, if we remove those contaminants, we can use this as a resource which is quite readily available. Okay. Now, apart from this, there is a fresh water abstraction cost. So, when we go for the meeting freshwater demands, we have to withdraw fresh water from the resources. So, let us say we are withdrawing water from river or withdrawing water from groundwaters. So, there is a pumping cost we have to make for this intake infrastructure for that purpose. So, there is a abstraction cost of that, whereas the wastewater like there is a associated cost with wastewater discharge also. So, wastewater that we are producing, we are like we have to make this wastewater pass through several stages. So, it is being generated at some point, then we have to put through a sewer network, a sewerage system which kind of collects this wastewater, and then a treatment to whatever degree treatment is needed, we have to give this a treatment, and then if we just want to discharge it. So, that is the kind of like for again to connect it to the river system. So, excluding the externalities, excluding the environmental cost, positive and negative externalities associated with it, there is a huge cost of the wastewater discharge as well. So, there is a freshwater abstraction cost and there is a wastewater discharge cost. If we start using wastewater as a resource, okay, so we are actually going to get rid of these two. Okay, we will be getting rid of wastewater discharge cost because we are not going to discharge wastewater, and we are going to get rid of the freshwater abstraction cost, not completely, but whatever fraction that we are actually reusing it. So, that much water we will not need to withdraw from the resources. So, that decrease in the freshwater abstraction cost will also be there. Then another and kind of more important driving factor is the regulatory requirements of wastewater treatment and disposal. Okay. and this is far more important for industrial purposes. So, like the regulatory agencies that we have, so for our case it is say Central Pollution Control Board or State Pollution Control Boards, okay, or Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Changes, which looks after these aspects. So, these different regulatory bodies that we have, they have certain regulatory requirements for wastewater treatment and disposal. So, if we want to say dispose of a wastewater, we have to meet those regulatory requirements. Okay. Now, for the purpose of meeting those regulatory requirement could be of particularly in this age, these regulatory requirements are getting more and more stringent. So, if we have to kind of dispose the wastewater, you have to treat it, still you have to treat it at certain degree. So, municipal supplies, we do not have option, we cannot cut actually the municipal supplies that way. So, whatsoever sewage is being generated, whether there is a facility or not available or not available, what is done often is that even if there is no facility, the untreated water is goes into the disposal through a disposal system to a natural water body or rivers, those kind of thing. But for industries, these regulatory requirements are pretty stringent. So, if an industry is not meeting the discharge quality standards, those industry can be shut off. Okay. So, like CPCB or Central Pollution Control Board does that almost every year. They issue notices and shut down certain industries for not meeting these environmental norms. Okay. So, that kind of requirements or that kind of regulatory requirements are also a deriving factor for wastewater reuse and recycling, more so into the industrial sector, or if you are, let us say, having a big housing complex coming up. So, there might be like the regulatory requirement from the development authority of the city that okay, we will permit this, we will license this construction only when you come up with a wastewater treatment and recycling system within the premises of your housing complex. So, those kind of norms are also coming, particularly in the big cities. There are financial rewards for having these kind of system in housing complexes. So, that way there is kind of additional advantages are also being offered for going from our regulatory agencies for going for such systems. Okay. And industries are being more pressurized to go for a system which is called ZLD, which is in fact zero liquid discharge. Okay. So, this ZLD system, zero liquid discharge systems, are kind of requirement where the industry does not discharge any liquid outside its premises. So, it has to kind of treat and reuse the entire wastewater, entire effluent that it is generating out of the industrial processes within its own premises. That is what is called ZLD, zero liquid discharge, means there is no discharge, there is no liquid which is being disposed of from the industry. Okay. So, that again kind of emphasizes that the 100% reuse or 100% recycling of the wastewater or the effluent which is being generated from these industries. Okay. So, that is those kind of regulatory requirements are another reason, or they may not be kind of motivation that way, okay, but kind of enforcement from the regulatory bodies making industries compelled to go for the treatment and recycling of the wastewater which is being produced from the industries. Then there are environmental and social responsibilities, which is another factor, another driving factor for wastewater reuse and recycling. So, what happens that often like there are various environmental agencies or NGOs who come up with kind of protest if some body is polluting water to a large scale. So, and it gets into these days there are media is quite active. So, those kind of issues could be highlighted and they also kind of put pressure onto the industries or even the government bodies, public sector bodies also for going for the treatment or reuse and recycling system. Okay. So, this social responsibility of cleaning the environment, keeping the environment clean also is there. So, with all like a combination of all these driving factors, maybe the motivation or the kind of need for going for the wastewater reuse and recycling system. So, that is what is the basic idea, basic motivation or requirement which kind of forces the utilities or the system or the industries to go for wastewater reuse and recycling systems. So, we will conclude this week's class discussion here itself, and in the next class we will further start discussing the various aspects of the reuse and recycling of the wastewater, what we can reuse and recycle, and what are the various opportunities where we can use the recycled water. So, see you in the next class, and thank you for joining.